colleague at work tried to take my project and get me fired. I never thought I would be in this situation. A coworker at work tried to take my project and get me fired, but I didn't let him do it. My name is Mark. I'm 35 years old, and I work as an engineer at one of the largest technology companies in America. It all started a few months ago when I was put in charge of a secret project codenamed Phoenix. The project was so important that it was being discussed at the highest levels of the company. We were developing a new type of software that could change the entire market. The idea was to create a platform capable of combining various artificial intelligence and machine learning systems in such a way that users could receive the most accurate and personalized solutions almost instantly. Imagine a future where every business can adapt to customer needs literally in real time. We had been working on this project for almost a year, and now we were finally on the cusp of the big reveal. Every day brought new ideas and improvements, and I felt that success was very close. The team was working hard, but the atmosphere was positive. Everyone understood how meaningful our work could become. One day, however, everything changed. It started with the management taking an unhealthy interest in our project. At meetings, they asked too many questions about where we were and what progress we were making. The questions became more and more specific, and sometimes it felt like they were trying to find out more than they needed to know. I noticed that some of my coworkers started acting strangely, avoiding talking about the project, as if they were afraid to say anything. At first, I wrote it off as stress because the work was really hard, but then I realized that the matter was much more serious. For example, one of our leading developers, Sam, started leaving work earlier than usual, although he had always stayed late before. When I asked him why he was doing that, he said he was tired and needed a rest. But I could see that something was bothering him. Another staff member, Sarah, stopped sharing her ideas at general meetings, even though her suggestions used to help us move forward. She became withdrawn and taciturn, and whenever I tried to talk to her, she would find an excuse to leave. These changes in the behavior of the people around me began to cause concern. Something was happening, and I didn't understand what it was. It seemed like the team was starting to disintegrate from the inside out, even though outwardly everything looked normal. I began to suspect that someone in management was trying to manipulate the situation, but I had no proof. When I walked into the office that morning, I immediately sensed something amiss. Usually, the first thing I did was check my email and start working on my current tasks, but today my computer screen remained black. I tried to log in, but the password didn't work. Strange, I thought, because everything was fine yesterday. I went to the system administrator to find out what was wrong. "Mark, you're locked out of your account. It says here it's only temporary while they run a check. Maybe you should go to your supervisor," said Mike, the system administrator. Hearing this made me feel a little uneasy. Why is my account locked? What's with the audits? I went back to my desk and dialed the number of Jack, my supervisor. After a few beeps, he picked up. "Jack, here's the situation. My access to the system has been blocked. Can you explain what's going on?" I asked. Jack hesitated for a moment, then answered, "Yes, Mark, it's a temporary measure. We've had some security issues, so your account has been temporarily restricted. I think it will be resolved quickly. You just have to wait a little while." His voice sounded calm, but I caught a note of alienation that hadn't been there before. Something's not right here, I thought. But following Jack's instructions, I decided to wait. Perhaps it really was just a formality. 24 hours passed, then 2, and still no access. I was getting nervous. Without access to the system, I couldn't continue working on the project, and it was already affecting the whole team. Finally, on the third day, I called Jack again. "Jack, it's been 2 days and still no access. I need to get back to work. What's going on with this audit?" I asked. He sighed, and his tone became even colder. "Mark, the thing is, the audit has been delayed. Until it's over, you'd better take a vacation. The company will pay for it, of course. So relax, take some time off." "Vacation? I could barely contain my irritation. It was like trying to get rid of me while they decided what to do next. But I realized it was useless to argue. In the end, I agreed, even though I was seething with anger and anxiety inside. A week later, representatives from Human Resources came to my house. One of them held a folder with documents in his hands. The other looked at me with an expression of sympathy mixed with distrust. "Mark, we have to tell you some unpleasant news," the first one began. "You have been charged with leaking confidential information. Our internal investigation has revealed that you have been passing project data to competitors." The world seemed to stop. I couldn't believe my ears. Giving data to a competitor? That's absurd. I put my heart and soul into this project, worked day and night to bring it to completion. And now I'm being accused of betrayal? "You must realize that this is serious," the HR representative continued. "We're offering you a severance agreement. If you agree to go quietly, the case will not be taken to court." Think carefully. I tried to explain to them that it was some kind of mistake, that I wasn't guilty of anything. But no one wanted to listen. Instead, they offered me to sign a severance agreement, promising that if I agreed to leave quietly, the case would not be taken to court. Of course, I refused. I knew I was right, and I wasn't going to give up without a fight. The following weeks were spent in endless meetings with lawyers and trying to gather evidence of my innocence. I hired a lawyer who specialized in corporate litigation, and together we began to analyze every detail of what had happened. We reviewed emails, searched phone records, examined server access logs, anything that could help us reconstruct a picture of the events. But the deeper we dug into the investigation, the harder it became to find any leads. Every trail led to a dead end. Colleagues I'd worked side by side with for months suddenly stopped picking up the phone when I called. Even those I considered friends began to avoid socializing with me. The atmosphere around me had changed dramatically. There was silence and suspicion everywhere. It was especially hard to realize that even Jack, my former boss, whom I had always considered an honest and fair man, had now turned his back on me. His phone was constantly busy, and his messages went unanswered. When I finally managed to reach him, he briefly told me that he couldn't help me and hung up. This was especially painful because I'd always trusted him and considered him my mentor. It felt like someone was purposely turning everyone against me. Every step, every movement seemed to be part of a carefully planned game in which I was just a pawn. I began to feel isolated and vulnerable. My mind was racing with thoughts. How could they do this? Why would they want to destroy my career and reputation? Meanwhile, the pressure from management was mounting. They continued to insist that I sign a severance agreement, threatening to take me to court if I refused. My lawyer advised me not to rush into a decision, but my nerves were on edge. I felt that time was playing against me, and the longer I procrastinated, the stronger their influence became. But despite the hardships, I kept fighting. I couldn't let them win so easily. The fire of justice burned within me, and I was ready to go to the end to prove my innocence and regain my good name. Finally, the day came when I was summoned to meet with the management. I hoped I could convince them that I was right, but instead I was met with cold stares and harsh words. The room was filled with heavy silence when I entered. The board members were seated around a long table, their eyes fixed directly on me. I felt a chill run down my spine. One of the leaders, a man with stern features, began to speak. "Mark, we have gathered enough evidence of your guilt. You have passed confidential data to our competitors, and this is unacceptable. We are offering you one last chance. Sign a severance agreement, and we will keep this case within the company. If you don't, we'll be forced to turn it over to law enforcement. Your career will be destroyed." His words sounded like a sentence. I looked at the other board members, their faces as impenetrable as stone masks. No one was going to change their minds. They were sure they were right, and nothing could shake their confidence. Inside me, everything was boiling. I knew they were lying, but I had no proof. My arguments crashed against the wall of their indifference. I knew it was a trap set by one of them to eliminate me and appropriate the fruits of my work. But how to prove it? It was a critical moment. I was faced with a choice: accept defeat and leave, preserving at least the remnants of my reputation, or fight on, risking everything. At that moment, I remembered all the years of hard work, all the sleepless nights spent on projects, and realized that I couldn't just give up. The fire of justice was burning inside me, and I couldn't let them win so easily. No, I said firmly, I'm not signing anything. I'm innocent, and I'll prove it. The executives looked at each other. Their eyes narrowed, and I felt the tension in the room rise. One of them leaned forward and said, "Too bad, Mark. Your stubbornness will play against you. We will do everything we can to end your career here and now. No one will ever need you again." I walked out of the room, feeling the world crumbling around me. But at the same time, a determination grew inside me. I wasn't going to let them break me. I had to find a way to prove my innocence. I lay awake for a long time that night, wondering how to proceed. The world seemed dark and hopeless, but I wasn't going to give up. In the morning, I called my old friend, Dan, who worked at another company. We went to university together, and he was always there for me when I needed support. "Dan, I need your help," I said when he picked up the phone. "You know what happened? I'm innocent, and I'm going to prove it. But I need an independent investigation. Will you be able to help?" Dan thought for a moment, then answered, "Of course, Mark. I believe in you. Let's meet and discuss a plan of action." We agreed to meet in the evening at a small cafe near my house. When I got there, Dan was already waiting for me. He looked worried but determined. "Mark, I've talked to some people I know in the IT field. There are a couple of experts we can trust. They're willing to help us, but we're going to have to tread carefully. If management finds out we're conducting our own investigation, they may take steps to stop us." I nodded, realizing that we had a tough fight ahead of us. But I was ready for it. We began discussing strategy, how to gather evidence and proof that could disprove the charges against me. Time was working against us, but I knew that if we were persistent and careful, we could get justice. It took a few more weeks before we were able to find our first leads. Dan and I worked around the clock, gathering any possible information that could help us uncover the truth. We contacted former employees, searched for hidden files on old servers, checked network access logs. Every little detail mattered. And then one night, when I was about to give up hope, we came across something important. The data I had allegedly sent to a competitor was sent from a computer in the office of one of the company's top managers. This man, Eric, had long had a reputation as a schemer and was known for his methods of achieving goals at any cost. He had always strived for power and was not shy about using dirty methods to achieve his ambitions. But there wasn't enough evidence to present to his superiors. The correspondence between Eric and other employees of the company was encrypted, and we could not establish exactly what was going on. We needed concrete facts that could not be disputed. Then I decided to go to the extreme. Hacking into the corporate network was illegal, but I had no other choice. I knew I was risking everything, but if I wanted to save my career and prove my innocence, I had to act decisively. At night, when all the employees had gone home, I broke into the company building. Once in Eric's office, I connected my laptop to his computer and started searching. Using special programs, I managed to bypass the security and access his email account. There I found correspondence that confirmed my worst fears. Eric had indeed organized this setup to take the project for himself, to get a promotion and bonuses. He had arranged for one of his competitors to provide false evidence of my guilt. This whole scheme was carefully thought out and executed. I made copies of all the emails and forwarded them to a secure server I had set up in advance. Then I left the office, taking care not to leave any traces. I now had indisputable evidence and was ready to present it to my attorney. The next morning, I went to another meeting with management armed with the evidence I had obtained. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I was determined. As I entered the conference room, I saw the same people I had seen at the last meeting, but this time their gazes were less confident. Apparently, they sensed something was wrong. I spread out in front of them the printouts of the emails I'd found on Eric's computer. The emails contained clear evidence that Eric had orchestrated this whole scheme to frame me and seize control of Project Phoenix. I pointed out key points in the correspondence, explaining how he had acted and what his goals were. At first, they tried to deny everything, claiming the emails were forgeries. But when I showed them the original file metadata and explained where I got it from, their faces changed. They realized the game was over. There was a long pause, after which one of the executives stood up and said, "Mark, we admit we made a mistake. Your evidence is compelling. We are ready to discuss how to rectify the situation." After that meeting, a major change began at the top of the board. Eric was immediately fired, and another manager, known for his integrity and professionalism, took his place. Internal investigations were conducted, and many people involved in the scheme were punished. I was reinstated, and I took over the Phoenix project again. We continued to work on it with redoubled energy, and a few months later, our company introduced a new software that became an instant hit in the market. Thanks to our hard work, the company became a leader in the industry. But the most important thing for me was not the success of the project, but the restoration of my reputation. I proved that the truth always wins, and that honesty and persistence can overcome any obstacle. This experience taught me a lot. One should never give up, even when it seems that everything is lost. You need to believe in yourself and your strength, and then any obstacle can be overcome.